Hello friends, what a time in history. I'm just looking at the news right now and we have Microsoft being asked questions about would they hand over your information. The mobile industry has changed so much in 20 odd years. I actually used to be in telecoms. It was a place I'm not going to forget because I actually, with two or three other Christian guys, dear Alan and Mike, we were, I suppose, in our mid-40s or late 40s, and it was a place where you could get on and do business, you thought. But oh no, in my situation with the telecom company that I was working as a consultant for, commission only, as a consultant, I earned around £165,000, but I never saw a penny. That money was hived off into a different account, and all the commission-only guys were made redundant because they had, obviously got the business in. I'm trying to tell you something. I got so fed up with being like so many other men, good men, honest guys, who were taken to one side and basically shot in the head, and their commission payments were taken from them. I couldn't work in that industry any longer, and that particular company still goes today. And all I can say is that what you're going to hear from my colleague and dear friend Rick Wiles over in America is the next stage of this revolution, G4, G5 technology for mobile phones. This is something that you've got to understand if you're a Christian, and I say that loosely today because a lot of Christians don't have a clue what's really happening. That's why I would advise them to come into Rick's sites and various other sites which I can mention right now. TrueNews.com, Truth, that's JAH Truth.net, and I'm sure you'll find other links of KCTVmedia.com along the way. We have a lot of information. We've been going almost 10 years, and we've been putting our hands in our own pocket to make this channel work, and thankfully God has done so many amazing things that we are now seriously looking at putting an internet radio station together, and hopefully to promote True News and other channels, because I believe the more we can promote other channels, the more chance that the people out there, the populace, will be able to find out what's really going on. I would ask you to go into youtube.com/KCTV Media and look at the most recent video films we've been doing over the last 6 months. And I think you'll be surprised by the amount of incredible information that's come our way. And so I'm going to hand over to Rick, and I really just felt that we should actually give you some idea of my involvement in the telecoms industry. And of course you can only take so many hits like that where people walk away with your commissions that have been earned honestly and above board, no backhanders, that kind of thing. And funny enough, the guy that actually took it from us was a Muslim guy, a guy called Asim Abbas, and yeah, he did that to quite a few guys, and then left the company. So we know all about the telecoms industry, and it was where the Lord finally said, enough is enough, I want you to work with me. And that's how KCTV Media came about, and I wouldn't have had it any other way, because I can wake up in the morning and I believe that we're doing a job that's worthwhile for you folk can take a chance to look at the information that's upon you. Come into kctvmedia.com. K stands for Kingdom, C stands for Creatives, TVmedia.com. your life will change. I've got some other information which I'd love to share with you, because last week I'd gone to see somebody and a group of folk, and at lunchtime I felt that I should go and have a bit of bite to eat in a local cafe. And if I was to tell you that as I was approaching or going into the cafe, there was a gust of wind that came through the cafe itself, and I grabbed hold of the front door, and unfortunately the guy behind me, I can't say his name at the moment, but you're going to hear from this guy, literally said, "That's okay, mate, things like that happen." But the guy literally walked into the back of the door, which forced me forward and which forced me to push other people. But the guy, within 2 minutes, confidently said, he said, "I want to share some stuff with you about conspiracy theories and stuff." He said, "Can we have a cup of tea?" I don't even know this guy. I honestly don't know this guy. So we sat down for a breakfast, which amazingly he paid for. He paid for my breakfast. But in the next 50 to an hour, this guy shared stuff which I hadn't heard before. And then I gave him a little blue card, and he said, "You know more than I do." I said, "I don't know. I think you know more than I do," because this guy had been touched by, I believe, the Lord. So you're going to hear him. He's going to share a testimony, and this could well be the next time that you hear from us. I tell you what, there is stuff going on you just wouldn't believe. Anyway, I look forward to hearing from you, and bye for now. Just before we press on the button to hear Rick Wiles and colleagues talk about this artificial intelligence coming to the G5 mobile phones, this is such an important one to listen to. This was done on March the 24th, 2017, and the title will be Rick Wiles, Artificial Intelligence, Robotics, Singularity and the Next Society. This is the one that we want you to listen to the whole thing. We have been able to record much of the recording, but there was a technical issue on our recording. So if you want to go to Rick Wiles, True News, TRUNEWS.com, and then go to March 2017, the archive section, and click on and listen directly from True News. Okay, many thanks. Sorry for this, but these technical issues do happen from time to time, but I know that this is going to help a lot of people understand the news that's happening now. Okay, God bless.
And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. One man, one microphone, one mission, one message. True News, the only newscast reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Here is end-time newsman, Rick Wiles.
Welcome to a special edition of True News. I'm Rick Wiles. Within 30 years, there will be more robots on Earth than humans. That was the prediction I heard in Barcelona, Spain last month. The speaker was Masayoshi Son, the billionaire owner of Japan's SoftBank Group. Mr. Son is an enthusiastic proponent of singularity, the tipping point when machines are smarter than humans and begin reasoning and making intelligent decisions. The IQ of the average human is 100. A genius may have an IQ of 200. Mr. Son said AI-infused computers will have an IQ of 10,000. He said that a burst of superintelligence will make its way into all sorts of Internet of Things devices, robots, autonomous vehicles, and smart cities by the year 2030. As I learned in Barcelona, the mobile telephone industry has been tapped by the global elite to build the nervous system, and global brain for a new society of humans coexisting with artificially intelligent machines. I concluded many years ago that biblical prophecies about the end of the age will not involve political governments and politicians. Instead, the fourth beast in Daniel's vision and in the book of the Revelation is a corporate government ruled by zillionaire technocrats. Did you see the photograph of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos inside the cockpit of a massive robot at the recent Machine Learning, Home Automation, Robotics, and Space Exploration Conference? By the way, the Mars conference is closed to the public and the news media. It's by invitation only. Mr. Carl Teichrieb and Mr. Patrick Wood are here today to discuss artificial intelligence, robots, singularity, and the next society. Patrick is the author of the best-selling book, Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. Carl Teichrieb is a longtime student of singularity, transhumanism, global governance, and the transition to a post-Christian spiritual worldview. He's working on a new book that hopefully will be published later this year. It is titled Game of Gods in the Age of Re-Enchantment. Let's bring Patrick onto the program first. Patrick Wood, welcome back to True News.
Hey, good to be back. Rick, thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. And Carl Teichrieb, are you there?
Yes, I am. A pleasure to be with you.
Yes, sir. Gentlemen, I am glad that you made time to be here with me today because I came back from Spain with a radically different perspective about how far we are in a timeline of transitioning into an artificially intelligent ruled world. I was not expecting to hear and see what I heard and saw in Barcelona. I went to Barcelona naively, looking for technology, information, software about the transition of video media content to mobile phones. That's not what I heard. The opening session of the opening day was devoted to the global brain. And I sat there dumbfounded. And I quickly realized why the Holy Spirit had prompted me to go to Barcelona. But the entire conference was centered on artificial intelligence, a new society, smart cities, autonomous vehicles, the United Nations Agenda 2030, and so forth. That was the whole focus of the World Conference of Mobile Telephone Executives. It was astounding to me.
There's a quantum, if I could use the word quantum leap, there is a quantum leap taking place right now in technology. And most people are really out of touch with it. They just don't see it coming. And of the things that you saw, I can imagine you were shocked. I would have been shocked, and I've been kind of following this for some time. But the key things on the horizon here, number one is the new technology for data transfer called 5G.
And Patrick, that was the core of all the discussions. They have to implement 5G in order to build the global brain and the artificial intelligence.
That's exactly right. They need the speed, and now they believe they have it, and they don't particularly care about how much radiation it's going to throw off, by the way, that will have some impact on society, but they're going to do this. The other thing that couples with that is this whole concept of the Internet of Things, which has morphed, by the way. We used to, 2 years ago, the Internet of Things was the IoT was a big topic, but now it's morphed into the Internet of Everything. That's IoE. And what that means is that you have the mobile technology, the things, the inanimate things, and then you have the living things like you and I. And the global elite, or whatever you want to call it, the technologists, technocrats that are putting all this stuff together, they see a merging together of inanimate objects with living objects to create an Internet of Everything that will be monitored and controlled, micromanaged down to just incredible levels through this 5G transmission protocol. And it is outright. I mean, if there was ever an instance when Alvin Toffler's book Future Shock could be seen, this is it, where it just appears like magic. It's like, how can this be? How could it just jump on us so quickly?
2030 was the target date that they talked about throughout all the sessions, but they also mentioned 2025. 2025 is the target date for what they refer to as bridging the digital divide. That's when the undeveloped world catches up with the developed world in terms of internet connectivity. They announced, the plans to implement a worldwide coverage of internet connectivity through low orbiting satellites. And again, I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this, and Mr. Sun, the owner of SoftBank, is a major investor in these technologies. He's a big investor in OneWeb satellites. So last week here in Florida, there was a press conference up at NASA, at the Kennedy Space Center, and OneWeb broke ground for a 150,000 square foot factory to build 2,000 low orbiting satellites. They're doing this. I mean, they've got the pedal to the metal. They're not sitting back saying, "Hey, this is sci-fi predictions for the next 100 years." No, guys, they are building it today.
This is so revolutionary, Rick, that Ray Kurzweil, the founder of Singularity University and really the founder of the concept of singularity, he's been predicting for years that 2045 would be the year that singularity is reached. That's when computer technology and AI technology exceeds the capacity of humans and just goes vertical. And he's been predicting it for 2045. This technology now is so radical that you're talking about here that Ray Kurzweil had just this month brought forward his forecast of the singularity from 2045 to 2029. So he's accelerated his forecast now that it's going to happen in 2029. That's probably in our lifetime, very possibly.
That lines up. It's only 13, 14 years away. All right. So it lines up with the United Nations Agenda 2030, which was prominent throughout the conference. The Director General of the mobile telephone industry proudly announced that the mobile industry was the first corporate sector in the world to make a full commitment to the implementation of the UN Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So all this is tied together. The UN, artificial intelligence, singularity, a global brain. The target date is 2030.
Well, I'm glad, Rick, that you brought up the United Nations in this. When I went to the World Future Congress, the 2045 World Future Congress, which took place in 2013 in New York, one of the reasons for that very audacious transhumanist event was to put a letter forward to the United Nations requesting that the United Nations take on the task of being the global manager, because some type of management system, political, social management system, would be necessary to push forward and implement a truly globally controlled system of technologies and connectivity that would bring about a transhumanist society. The other thing that I think is worth noting, and I'm glad you brought up the aspect of developing countries, because developing countries, in some respects, have jumped ahead in ways that we here in North America have sometimes missed. A good example is India's Prime Minister Modi. When Prime Minister Modi was campaigning, Prime Minister, or before he was Prime Minister, obviously, when he was campaigning, he set up a virtual Modi, where he basically had life-size 3D holograms of himself beamed into different parts of India, where he would be involved in campaigning through a virtual holographic type of platform. And this was how he connected to so many of the younger generation in India to come out and vote for him. So we are entering a truly a revolutionary period, a very different phase of civilization. The other aspect, and Pat, you brought up the sense that this is almost like a type of a magic. I'm glad you brought in that word, because I've been involved in trying to understand some of the virtual reality connections and concepts, and the concept of magic comes up over and over again, that what we're doing is through our technology, we are entering into a phase where our thinking will be changed, our spirituality is changed. We feel like we're all one. We feel like we're all connected. We have this incredible feeling, but it's a feeling that is more or less being technically driven and technically manipulated.
You're right, because they are talking about a fundamental transformation of human society, a radical change in humanity's concept of reality.
And this is something that, even 15, 20 years ago, we could see bits and pieces of what this would look like. It wasn't that, at least in my mind, it wasn't that long ago when Ray Kurzweil was putting out his book, The Singularity is Near, and The Spiritual Machine. I mean, these are already quite a few years old. But what he was talking about then, everybody kind of went, oh, well, this is really forward thinking, but not in my lifetime. Really? It's happening before our very eyes.
We see this on all societal fronts. The transformation is taking place. We see technocracy being imposed on society as a method of management. We see transhumanism being impressed on people, which, of course, those are the citizens that would live in a technocracy. Both of those are based on scientism, by the way. And then you have the whole spiritual transformation that's going on at the same time. This harkens my mind back to think about people like Peter Drucker, for instance, who said, yep, it's a three-legged stool, all right. We need to have all these things going together. This is exactly what we see on all three of these areas. So when you look at the Mobile World Conference is so radical, but if you look at the other areas, you look at go look at transhumanism by itself, or singularity by itself, or go look at technocracy and some of these other areas, and the spiritual thing, you will see as much radical stuff going on there as you see in Mobile World. It's all happening at the same time. It's like a full court press, if you will.
That's a good way of looking at it, Pat, because it is across the board. It's not just simply one aspect of social renovation. The entire structure, culture, spirituality, politics, business, how we engage in communication, everything is going into high speed. It's all moving very, very quickly. I just returned as well from a conference. I was at the Piganicon in Minneapolis, the 7th annual Piganicon, which is a medium-sized gathering of witches and druids, Wiccans. About 450 to 500 people were there. And what struck me as I listened and watched and observed, even in some of the rituals, just kind of watched from the sidelines as what was going on. This is spirituality, but it is a spirituality which seeks to find a technique. It's all technique-driven. The rituals are technique-driven. In fact, lots of discussion about this particular school or that particular school of spiritual technique. And what we're seeing with transhumanism is a form of technique. Technocracy is all about technique. The Tower of Babel, all the way back, is a type of technique. We're always searching for some technique, some system, some fundamental operating principles, some operating software or hardware that we could pull together and create, literally through the works of our own hands, some gateway into a new spiritual way of thinking. And so all of this is coming together for really a type of a global Babel technique.
As the world moves into this new society over the next 10, 15 years, and vast numbers of humans are spending much of their time in augmented or virtual reality, will we see a new religion formed? We
already are.
Will we?
I do VR. I've been in Second Life for a long time. This year, the last few months, I've been playing around a little bit with my son using Oculus Rift. In fact, back in January, I teach a course on secular pagan trends at a Bible college. It's a modular course, 1 week, really intensive review of where the trends are taking us. And this morning, right before we had this conversation, gentlemen, I was sitting going through the different essays that my class had sent off to me for me to mark, and many of them on gaming and the spirituality that's coming through their gaming system, where they realize and understand that they are being preached to. And the virtual reality aspect is a fantastic medium for this because it makes it immersive. It makes you feel like you're there. It changes your worldview. It changes the way you perceive reality. And then you marry spirituality into this, and all of a sudden you have an experience. In your mind, in your thinking, you have a shift because now you have experienced it tangibly. You've immersed yourself in it. And I think one of the things I'm seeing with this incredible sense of global technology and mobility when it comes to our communication networks is we're setting ourselves up for a global experience. We'll see even bigger changes coming about because of this.
Carl and Patrick, we all know that Lucifer is an imitator of God. He's building a global brain because he's unable to be everywhere at all times and see everything like God. So he has to do this through an artificial mechanism. Will he create a mirror image of Christianity in which people, while they are in an augmented or virtual reality state, will experience, as you're talking about, Carl, they will have a spiritual religious experience, whereas they meet Lucifer and they begin calling it a born again experience, and everything starts to develop. A virtual reality church is formed around Lucifer, and all the terminology, all the rituals, everything that Christianity has known for 2,000 years is mirrored in a augmented or virtual reality world. And people are now going to, quote, church in that state and communing with Lucifer, thinking they have met some deity.
That's an interesting step. And you know, I mean, there's a certain amount that's speculative to it, but at the same time, there's some real tangible thinking behind this. Is with what you're talking about. I go to some different conferences, transhumanist conferences in virtual worlds, and there's one that I go to every basically 6 months is a specific one I try to attend, and almost always Lucifer. And it's an avatar, somebody's representation of themselves in the virtual space. Lucifer pops up, and he's usually hovering in the back of the conference room as the conference happens in this virtual environment. And you're looking at this thing hovering over your shoulder, and you're going, well, this is kind of wild. And you may, just basically, it's somebody in the background who's dressed themselves up, their avatar, this way. But to me, it demonstrates that the worldview and that thinking behind it, they know, they understand that there is a spiritual side to this. There's a very tangible spiritual side. And what you just described could sound like a science fiction novel or a science fiction movie, but I think we're far closer to that type of a reality than we have ever imagined in the past.
I would point out that delusion and deception are all in your mind. It's not anywhere else. There's no reality to a deception. It's right. Completely just immaterial. And so who knows how people can be deluded? We've seen people be deceived in, thousands of things over the millennia. And this is happening today. And the Bible does say in the end that God himself will send a strong delusion on the world to believe crazy stuff. And people are already believing crazy stuff, though. I have to say, like some of the stuff you heard at Mobile World. This is just like, crazy, mystical, tied to some kind of spirituality stuff. And you go, wow, how could they believe this? How could they be so fooled?
Actually, Patrick, The delusion is sent because they choose to believe crazy stuff.
Right.
Oh, yes, you're right. Absolutely right. But if you go back to Nimrod and Babel, and study that just a little bit, you'll find out what convinced the people that they could build that tower in the first place was the introduction of technology, a new technology that they'd never seen before. Doesn't say who invented it, by the way. Probably it was Nimrod, under the tutelage of you-know-who. And that technology was building square baked bricks and using tar to stick them together so that they would be flexible enough to withstand winds and whatever. And they figured instead of building with rocks and mortar, which is not very stable, this new technology offered them something, and the deception came through that technology. They finally concluded, I believe, hey, we can do this. We got this new stuff, man. We can build a tower, right into heaven. Well, of course, they couldn't build a tower right into heaven because there's I don't care what kind of technology. But today, technology is being used in exactly the same way, where people are concluding, hey, we can do this. Transhumanists are concluding, hey, we can we can achieve immortality because we have this new science. And of course, they're overestimating what it will do for them. But it looks like it's the same play to me. It's just in orders of magnitude greater today than it was back then. But it's very much the same.
So, Patrick, going back to the Tower of Babel, humanity spoke one language. God said, because they have one language, nothing is impossible to them, and that's why God scattered them upon the earth and confused their language to break up that concentration of intelligence. Are we now moving into an age when a single language will be spoken again, and it's code?
Yes, it is. I believe that for years, and this is true. You take a group of scientists from any country in the world that are most diverse in their languages, and they only speak one language. You put them in a room, and you slap down on the table, say, 50 pages of artificial intelligence code done in whatever language they might be familiar with, and you will see them jump on that like fleas on a dog, and they will have a conversation amongst themselves for the next 5 weeks talking about the code. And the code is the common language today everywhere in the world, and it's mostly code in English, whether it's a PHP, whether it's a Ruby on Rails, whether it's a C++ or whatever. You can take code and pass it around, and you find people in every country that understand exactly what you're trying to do.
This is interesting. You brought in the Babel aspect, and this is so important. Babel was an exercise in collective unity and power through that collective unity. It was a technique. It was driven by this desire for man to be unified. In fact, as you read through that account, you realize that the concept of being unified is very, very strong, lest they be scattered, is how it's phrased. So it's about coming together. It's about this idea of oneness. We're all moving together. We are all united. And science now, especially the philosophical side of science, is pushing again for this idea. What is the underlying principle? What is the core? What is it that we're truly trying to do? We're trying to become one. We're trying to find our strength and our power in our unity. And there are incredible correlations between what I'm seeing with the reshaping of our society with how it fits back to the Tower of Babel. Now, it's not just the tower. It was a tower city complex. And we forget that there was a city attached to it. It was all part of this. But that wasn't even the first city in the Bible. If you go back into Genesis 4, you read that the first city in the Bible was the city of Enoch, built by Cain. And Cain built it in direct opposition to what God told him his curse would be for killing Abel, that he was supposed to wander. So Cain, instead of wandering, builds himself a city and names it after his son that he has there in that city. So from that point on, the city has symbolically, and man's desire to build and create has symbolically represented that we, man, will take our security in our own hands. We, man, will take our own power into our own hands. When we are faced with the curse, we will build and we will overcome, not by God's strength, not by His design, but by our design. And that's all what we're seeing happening today, gentlemen. It's just, there is nothing new under the sun. We're just now able to do it at orders of magnitude that we could not have imagined 20 or 30 years ago.
Gentlemen, in my eschatology about the end times, I don't believe that there's going to be a revived Roman Empire or any of that stuff that's commonly taught in American evangelical churches for the past 40, 50 years. I think all that stuff is it's just going to fall. These theories are going to fall to pieces in the next 5 years. What I believe is coming, this fourth beast, is a revived Luciferian empire that existed before the flood. That what the Tower of Babel was all about was reclaiming the lost glory of that Luciferian empire. Because Noah was still alive. His children were still alive, his grandchildren. People at that time were still hearing firsthand stories of the flood. And if they heard firsthand stories of the flood, then they obviously heard stories about what the world was like before the flood. And I believe Lucifer ruled the world. And I believe there was a high-tech society. I don't think people were living in caves. I think it was a high-tech society, and I believe God put an end to Lucifer's rule over mankind. If I'm correct, then what is coming is a rebirth of a global Luciferian government. And Lucifer will use technology to make himself a god. Now, going back to Barcelona, all of the discussions obviously were about a global brain, a global nervous system, smart cities, artificial intelligence, and so forth, autonomous driverless vehicles, and this utopian world that the technocrats were dreaming and plotting and scheming and building right now. But it all rested on rolling out 5G technology, 5G, 5th-generation mobile telephone technology. About every 10 years, the mobile industry comes out with another generation since 1982. Now, on the surface, 5G sounds fantastic. Who doesn't want faster speed? Who doesn't want better internet? I mean, on the surface, yeah, I'll go for it. I want it. But because I was there and I heard what they're going to build on top of it, that's what troubles me. And I know the rest of their plans depend on the implementation of 5G technology. Just to give the audience an understanding of how close we are to this utopia that they're building. Here's a story posted on 247wallstreet.com. It's dated March 20, 2017. We can expect to begin hearing more about the new telecom 5G network over the next year. Verizon Communications and AT&T both have plans to roll out 5G trials in several U.S. cities over the course of 2017. Verizon recently announced it will roll out 5G trials in 11 U.S. cities in the first half of this year. Ann Arbor, Atlanta, Bernardsville, New Jersey, Brockton, Mass., Dallas, Texas, Denver, Houston, Miami, Sacramento, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. AT&T has plans to roll out 5G trials in Austin and Indianapolis later this year. So I'm bringing this back to this realization that the technocrats are spending vast sums of money right now, this year, to rewire the world, to build thousands of satellites to cover every square inch with internet connectivity, to to replace all of the assets of the phone companies. They are fully committed to building the next society, and it's underway now as the three of us are speaking.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yes, sir. What are your initial thoughts as I'm telling you this? We're looking at 5G rollout this year.
For myself, as somebody who's used VR, I watch the changes taking place in VR, and I'll tell you right now that the talk within the VR community is the one thing that is absolutely crucial for VR to work at a global level and to have this pull together in the way that it is envisioned is to have this 5G network, is to go one step further. We need to have that real-time, globally accessible real-time network, because that's what it will become. It will become a real-time experience. We will need that for the next phase in this VR renaissance, because we are in a renaissance period when it comes to virtual reality, and it will become seamless. It will become so integrated in that into your experience that it's going to be difficult for a lot of people to disconnect themselves between what is real and what is this virtual space. And here's the thing: it's both going to be real, because what happens on the web and what happens in your networks, you're leaving a trace behind you. You're leaving a trail. You are engaged in a real activity. It just happens to be in a digital environment. And so when you're talking, Rick, of 5G, what you're talking about is that skeleton needed so that the flesh can be put on that skeleton, and 5G will be a part of that neural structure to allow this to transpire.
That's right. And after the flesh is put on the skeleton, the brain is put in the skull.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. There's a book that if anybody's interested in this topic, it's a must-have book. I normally would only say that about my own book, I suppose, out of self-interest, but this book is called Connectography. Connect, like connect, but ography, Connectography. The subtitle, Mapping the Future of Global Civilization, is written by a global scholar, a young guy by the name of Dr. Parag Khanna from Singapore. And the co-founder of Wired magazine, Kevin Kelly, wrote on the back cover, this is his quote, "This is probably the most global book ever written. It is intensely specific while remaining broad and wide. Its takeaway is that infrastructure is destiny. Follow the supply lines outlined in this book to see where the future flows." And I've read this book already. Over and over and over, it says infrastructure is destiny. And that gets to you after a while. Infrastructure is destiny.
Patrick, you mentioned Wired magazine, the editor. Have you read Inevitable?
I haven't.
That's one you need to read.
Oh, boy.
Inevitable.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, Kevin Kelly, speaking of Kevin Kelly, was his view in the early 1990s was that we were going to create a hive society where everything is connected in. There is a common purpose, a common concept, a common network, all working towards this common collective type of experience. We're all part of the hive. We're all just worker bees.
In their mind, at least, this is destiny. In a Christian's minds, of course, that's not destiny. Heaven is destiny. But the people in the world have a different view, obviously, and this whole idea of connecting everything together, and 5G is the glue that will bring it together, and other things too. I don't know if you went to any of the graphene sessions at Mobile World. That's another technology that's about to take off, and it's just absolutely stunning and mind-blowing what graphene could possibly do in the future.
What is it, Patrick?
This is a new single molecule or single atom thick network of carbon atoms. It's called graphene, and it's an artificial, it's nanotechnology, but it's an artificial when I say technology, and artificial, something that's not found in nature. But they're making this graphene, and it creates a thin membrane, like 1 atom thick, that is stronger than steel. It's absolutely impermeable. They're intending to use it in semiconductors now to replace silicon. They're talking about using it for wearable electronics, where you have your screen like right on your arm or whatever, or in your eyeballs. It's an absolutely revolutionary technology that they're just. It only got discovered in 2004, so they're just getting headway now with it. How are we going to use this stuff? But there are departments and universities around the world now that are studying graphene like crazy, and that's another technology it's going to dovetail.
Let's talk about autonomous vehicles. That's another one that I was surprised at how advanced the plans are for driverless cars. I mean, we've been reading stuff about Google, and you think, what are these freaks doing at Google? Why are they experimenting with driverless cars? Well, no, they are not experimenting. They have very definite plans to eliminate human-driven automobiles, and to do it very soon, and possibly within the next 5 years. Again, it all depends on 5G. I think it's possible that if you're driving a new vehicle right now, this may be the last vehicle you ever own.
Yeah, I agree.
What are the ramifications of a rapid transition to autonomous vehicles? I mentioned this in our church service several weeks ago. Just taking one market segment, automobiles and trucks. If you eliminate drivers, how many segments of the society and the economy are impacted? I mean, if you think this through, it's a radical shakeup of the economy. There goes car dealerships, car repair, automobile repair, damage. Nobody has to fix a fender if nobody's bending a fender. There goes parking garages. You don't need a parking garage if there's nobody parking. You don't need traffic cops. You don't need highway patrolmen. You don't need tow truck drivers. You don't need ambulance drivers because there are no accidents. What happens to the 90% decline in organ donations because of the reduction in accidents?
I think the kind of society here you're talking about really requires what Pat has really worked a lot on this, smart cities. This is the type of thing that requires a smart, wired-in, networked 5G urban environment. I don't see something like this being practical beyond the urban and into the rural areas where you're dealing with dirt and muck. Where I am in my part of the world, we've still got 2 feet of snow, dealing with all kinds of issues like that. But I really see what you're talking about, Rick, as being very much connected into this concept that Pat's been working on smart cities, and how this is becoming a very key component of a global urban society. Years ago, back in 2006, I went to the World Urban Forum in Vancouver, BC. It was a United Nations event, and so much of the discussion was what we have to do is recognize that cities are the building blocks for social globalism, and they can work around the problems of sovereignty when it comes to nation states. And we can create cities that are autonomous from the power of the nation state. New York City has incredible power. It's got more power, just one city, in terms of politics and economics and social development and all the rest, than a lot of countries. And so it was noted that the power of the world resides in your urban centers. And so I think that the aspect of the smart city will be absolutely paramount for driverless vehicles and this network of self-moving, autonomous motion and vehicles.
There were numerous digital displays in the exhibition hall. of smart cities, and there were a number of sessions dedicated to the development of smart cities. Realistically, let's put aside their utopian predictions and hype. Realistically, how long do you think it will take them to transition most urban centers into driverless transportation systems?
I think that's upon us right now, and I'll tell you, there are companies that are already making retrofit kits for existing automobiles. And it may not be possible going back to the 1960s, but the technology has been modularized for driverless cars, where only the hardware needs to be developed to control the steering and the braking system in the car. And otherwise, all the technology that makes a driverless car works can just be slapped on your car. And theoretically, any car in society today, my guess is within 5 years, you'll probably be able to buy a kit for about maybe $1,500 to $2,000 to slap on your car. Probably a professional has to do it, but put on your car that will make your car self-driving as well. What you do with that, and of course, eventually it'll wear out and die and go to the junk pile. But in the meantime, anybody that converts their car to a driverless car has the opportunity simply to switch it on and contribute it to the Uber pool, for instance, or the Lyft pool, where your car drives out, you say goodbye to your car drives off down the street to go out and pick up and carry people around the city. And when it's all done, it comes home and it parks itself in your driveway again. Hey, welcome home.
Patrick, I don't think we're going to own cars. I think we will subscribe to transportation services.
You're right. It will be transportation as a service, but during the transition phase, you'll see all of the existing cars not just sent to the dump right away, but you'll see some options come along where existing cars can be retrofitted and then used in the sharing economy. And so that means you can have an instant shared economy without having to sell everybody or sell brand new cars into the whole of society to throw away all the old cars and stuff. And eventually the old cars will rust out and die, and then you have all the shiny new ones or whatever that, they're just owned by the Ubers of the world and the Lyfts of the world. And you'll dial up a car on your app, on your phone. You'll say, I want to go from here to here, and you push send. And 2 minutes later, some little pod shows up in front of your house to take you there.
So the shared economy equals techno-Marxism.
Yes. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, the agriculture industry, because I live in a very rural area, is moving towards the idea of driverless tractors. Of course, there's still all kinds of different challenges in rural areas that you don't see in urban areas, and likewise back and forth. But yeah, this is a revolutionary movement that's coming across the spectrum of society, including rural areas.
Okay, now one of the topics, or I'll say topics, but it came up in various presentations. I heard CEOs demanding that governments eliminate competition, that consolidation was necessary for the building of this 5G network. So they clearly want to get rid of all competitors in the mobile phone world. But that leads me to the idea proposed by Peter Thiel, the billionaire owner of PayPal, and he maintains that competition is harmful to capitalism. Now, think that one through. Competition is harmful to capitalism, that the new economy must be based on monopolies, that the monopolies will be far more efficient in running this new society.
Pat, doesn't this sound familiar? Efficiency?
Well, I'll tell you, let me just put this right out. Peter Thiel is a technocrat to the core, absolutely, positively to the core of his being. He is the epitome of a technocrat, of a world-class technocrat. And it wouldn't surprise me that he would say something like that, because that's exactly the way they look at it. This is what the technocrats said back in the 1930s. Hey, just let us run everything. We know how to do it because we've got PhDs and great technology and stuff. Just turn everything over to us. Shoot, send Congress home, for Pete's sake. Get rid of all these elected people. They don't know what they're doing anyway. Just let the engineers and scientists run everything, and everybody will be happy. That's what they said.
Patrick, is that the new model of government that the world is transforming into?
Absolutely. I absolutely believe that. Everything I look at around the world says, yes, this is it.
Yeah, it goes back to H.G. Wells and his view of co-efficiency. Everything is maximized. Everything operates as a smoothly oiled machine. And of course, H.G. Wells, he viewed that he believed this would be a global change, what he called the open conspiracy. And what people need to realize is that while we're talking about technology, really every facet has to be touched, and that includes religion and spirituality. That includes
Absolutely.
culture, and that's a massive area that we, within the Christian world, have more or less overlooked in some respects. We focus on what maybe Walt Disney is doing without realizing that so many other areas of culture is being changed so quickly. And all of this boils down to that, and Pat, you said it earlier on, about that change in your mind. Mankind needs to change his mind, focus his allegiances and loyalties to a new master, not the God who is other, the God that is different, the God that stands outside time, space, and matter. No, we're going to build our own. We're going to build our own utopia, our own paradise. We're building our own Eden, and we will worship the constructions of our hand and the spirits that guide that construction, and we will turn our back from the true God. And to me, I look at all this and go, well, Babel brought God's judgment upon it. But there was also grace when God came down to Babel and scattered the people, because if he would have allowed it to continue on and would have allowed the project to go to its completion, there would have even had to been a stronger judgment people by God himself. And so he intervenes, he scatters them, and that really is an act of his grace. He could have done more. In fact, if he allowed it to continue, he would have had to have done more. I believe that there's a time coming when God himself will come back here and go, this is where I put the end to it. This is where I put a stop.
As in the days of Noah.
Right. Sadly, that's where the actual recording came to an end, which is a shame. But, of course, you can go on to the main site, truenews.com, and look for 03-24-17 recording, which is the artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. We do apologise for this, but it's a very rare thing that this happens. We had a bit of a conflict, and hence we haven't been able to completely finish off this recording. It's probably worth mentioning to go into the YouTube site, which is youtube.com/KCTV Media. There you'll have a full range of all the up-to-date video clips we've been doing, touching on such areas as the heavenly bodies, which are now coming into the solar system, shape-shifting, big pharma, fallen angels, giants, it's all linked together really, and about the Jezebel spirit. So if you really want to get to grips with that little bit, especially if you're a young Christian, we've got information there and recordings that will be helping you. Okay, so we look forward to any questions that you may have. And again, huge apologies for this, but at least you'll be able to hear the whole thing of True News and look at all the other material, because we believe that we are promoting other websites which likewise will be a benefit to people like yourself. One of the sites would be Yah Truth, that's spelled JAH truth.net. Peter Scuthan Ministries, that's Peter Scuthan SCOTHERN ministries.co.uk, and of course Rick Wiles' site, which we do tend to promote and have been doing so for some 3 or 4 years now. Okay, God bless you all. Speak to you soon. Bye for now.